Hey everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I am Justin, the Forgotten Vampire.
I'm Nico, the old hunter from Yarnum.
And I'm Dan, the Vampire Slayer.
And it's Vampire Week here on Don't Open That Door. That's right, this week we're going to be talking about all things vampire. And of course, we had to kick it off with, well, it is a classic of the genre. So we're going to be reviewing Horror of Dracula here in the US. So we've got a star-studded cast for you today. This movie was directed by Terence Fisher, but it stars Christopher Lee as Dracula. We've got Peter Cushing as, Van Helsing. Dr. Van Helsing, I'm sorry, he's a doctor. We've got Michael Gough as Arthur Holmwood. We have Melissa Stribling as Mina Harker. And we've got John Van Eysen as Jonathan Harker. So the movie opens with Jonathan Harker accepting a position as a librarian at Castle Dracula. Dracula's not there to greet him, but there is a woman who, she's like, can you help me escape? And he's like, I'll think about it. So not everything seems as it seems, because Jonathan is actually there to kill Dracula. Like, he's writing down in his journal, like, I'll end Dracula. Now's my time to defeat him. So later on, the woman goes back to Jonathan again. He kind of hugs her for comfort, but she actually bites him in the neck. Oh no, treachery. She was actually a vampire. Just then, Dracula shows up and he kind of grapples her and knocks out Jonathan. And we're just kind of left, well, what's going to happen next? So what does happen next, Nico?
Well, what happens next is Jonathan puts two and two together and realizes that he's probably going to start to turn himself, so he does his damnedest to go out and kill Dracula. He walks up to the coffin room, and trust me, this is a scene we're going to come back to. He sees Dracula sleeping in his coffin, and then he sees the other woman sleeping in their coffin, walks past Dracula, kills the woman, but damn it, you got me. Dracula just gets him right afterwards.
Yeah, Dracula wakes up. I guess the sun had set unfortunately, in time for Dracula. And then he kills Jonathan / turns him. So what follows these events, Dan?
So after that, we kind of skip to a different character, our Dr. Van Helsing, who is a friend of Jonathan and is trying to look for him. He hasn't heard from him, I guess, so he's trying to look for him. Dr. Van Helsing goes to the castle and he finds Jonathan and he realizes that he is asleep and a vampire now. So he ends up killing him because he needs to save his soul, I guess, and the vampire. So he kills him, but he can't find Dracula. So he ends up going back home to report that Jonathan is dead.
But that news doesn't really fall on, shall we say, kind ears, Nico, does it?
No, it doesn't. So when Van Helsing breaks the news to Arthur Holmwood and his wife, Mina, Arthur's the brother of Lucy, Jonathan's fiance, Lucy turns out is sick, but it is revealed that her illness is in fact caused by being down with the sickness, otherwise known as Dracula bites. She's being turned. Van Helsing realized this and attempts to prevent further incursions by Dracula, but the house staff are just so kind and gullible and manage to get Lucy killed regardless, just by failing to adhere to basic instructions.
And it doesn't end there with death, does it, Dan?
Nope, not at all. So Lucy turns into a vampire, and Van Helsing tells Arthur about just vampires in general, because Arthur hadn't known that this whole thing was vampire related. So together they end up killing Lucy, and so Dracula turns his attention now over to Mina. He finds her, kind of tricks her a little bit, finds her, and starts sucking out her blood. And then Arthur and Van Helsing try to find his coffin. Eventually, it turns out that it's actually in their own house. So Dracula flees back to his castle. Arthur and Van Helsing are following him, trying to track him down real quick. And Van Helsing ends up exposing Dracula to the sun. And in a pretty cool scene, actually, Dracula gets sort of not vaporized.
Dusted.
Dusted, yeah. He just crumples into dust when he touches the sun. And it's actually pretty cool. And that's the end of it.
We did know vampires had a weakness to the sun, but I'm going to ask you, Dan, did you think there were any weaknesses in the audio at all? How'd you feel about the score, soundtrack, et cetera, et cetera?
I thought it was cool. One thing I like about older movies is the score and the orchestral score, for lack of a better word. I enjoy the orchestra. It was pretty standard to me, fairly standard 50s movie score kind of fare.
Bro, that gong,
Dramatic. Yeah, right.
That gong was
Yeah.
a little much.
Yeah, it was a little over the top sometimes, but it was good, dramatic, orchestral movie music.
Nico, you have anything to say about the audio?
Yeah, the gong is too fucking loud and silly. It took me out of like everything every time it rang. Like there was a shot earlier on when John Harker was, looking out a window dramatically and like some curtains flapped and it was just I was like, come on, y'all. Don't do that. The only other thing that I really noticed in the audio is just that movies from this time period and also certainly earlier, they still have that sort of like I can never remember the name of it. I think it's like North Atlantic Radio Talk or something. Where they're talking like this, you see, and they've got the certain cadence to their voice where it sounds like they're on the radio and they're telling a story. See, even when they're on TV, and that's always interesting to me, just because it sort of makes me a little nostalgic. So I don't know, it has its charm.
I didn't get that personally.
Oh.
I
Well,
didn't get that so much either. I think it could also potentially be not so much the radio thing, but more, I believe most of these actors were from the stage.
Yep.
And so I think that's more so like a stage voice than it is.
That
like
might be it, honestly, yeah.
It was a very theatrical movie. Like a lot of the movements the characters did were
The blocking,
also like overly done, I think, in the way that theater is done, if that makes sense. Overly dramatic, I would say.
At certain points, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but you also got to keep in mind, like, I think for a lot of movies, especially in this time period, they were still, like very much pulling actors, from the stage to act in movies and do that kind of thing. So I think there was still a very heavy influence of,
That makes
theater
sense.
on these movies, particularly for something like a horror film. But in terms of visuals, and I guess I'll take the lead here. For what it's worth, I like the set design and the visuals. I think in places, I could be wrong here, but I don't imagine the budget was very, very high. I noticed, like they didn't really have like a ton of different locales they went to. I particularly liked the makeup they used on Christopher Lee for certain scenes. Like there was one scene where I think he was supposed to be very angry and they did a real close up on his
Yeah.
face and you could see like little hints of blood on his fangs and his eyes were red and bloodshot. I really, really, really liked that makeup and the design there. But Dan, how'd you feel about the visuals?
I actually liked them quite a bit. I'm kind of with you on that. I feel like there was some attention to detail that almost like surprised me. Like there was after Jonathan gets bit sort of near the beginning, the first time you really see the bite marks on his neck, the blood is sort of like trickling not straight down but sort of straight and like to the back of his neck a little bit. And for a second I was like, why did it go that way? But then I realized that he was laying down for a while, so the
Yeah,
blood
he
would have
was.
trickled down that way. And I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. Like I feel like that's an easy
is clever.
detail to miss. And when I thought about it, I was like, wait, that makes perfect sense why it happened. So I feel like there's some pretty cool little attention to detail, and overall I thought the visuals are actually pretty well done.
So Nico, you have anything to add to that?
On the whole, I do agree by and large with what both you are saying. I also just in particular, I really liked the color that they used with Dracula's color palette in particular, and especially in the beginning when he has those almost like feral, not even bloodshot, but beyond bloodshot, bloodied eyes almost, and just the presence that Christopher Lee has as Dracula is fucking just money, just oozes charisma. And so for that, and it's always a good thing to see Peter Cushing on screen too. Him and Christopher Lee, just shout outs to the legends.
I mean, dude, literally, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say my favorite parts of this movie were Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And I'm not even saying that to like fanboy. I mean, legitimately watching their performances in this. I mean, you're right. Christopher Lee does have first off, he's tall. He's really tall.
He's fucking large.
There are scenes where he's standing up right next to Peter Cushing and he like dominates like the room.
He
Like
is a towering motherfucker. He's like you, Dan.
He's like
Yeah.
so much taller. He's like so much taller than Peter Cushing. It's kind of funny. And I'm sure some of that, might be, costume and all that, but it's crazy. And I also appreciate, like, I don't know, sometimes it feels good to just have like a Dracula that is Dracula. It's not out here trying to like redefine the tropes about Dracula or anything. I think sometimes it's nice to have someone who tries to play it more classic. I did think he looked, and this is going to sound wild, I did think he looked a little young to be Dracula, but
That's so weird to hear, man.
I do think that, and I'll explain it a little bit later, by, like maybe like an hour in, I was like, okay, this makes, I think, a little more sense here. But for right now, let me go ahead and pose this question. And I'm going to start with Dan, because I think he can just, he has the sight. So this is an older movie, came out in 58. How would you say this movie holds up today? Like if we're going back and let's say you watch that movie today, how would you feel about it?
I feel like it holds up relatively well. I mean, all things considered, obviously, audio quality, visual quality is not the same quality that we're used to today. That's pretty obvious. But I mean, a lot of it holds up. I thought the acting sometimes was a little but I mean, it was still relatively enjoyable to watch. And I don't think there's any moment when I was watching it that I was like, oh man, this is so old. I don't know how to describe it. Like, there's no point that because of the age or the time, it took me out of the movie, if that makes sense.
No, I completely agree with you. And I guess for my piece, I've, seen films even from like the 70s that looked way worse than this. I think, this was definitely a professionally put together movie. So you are going to get that whole, professional thing. And I the version I watched was, I mean, it still looks fine. I know there are some movies, depending on like the transfer and which version you're watching, blown up on like a bigger TV, like the one I have. I think sometimes it may not look so good, but I thought it looked pretty good on my screen, Nico, your thoughts?
In terms of the general like cinematography and like film tropes and just the narrative, I would say that it does hold up. The thing that took me out of it, the things that were a little bit not anachronistic but dated for me was just like the casual like, and it's not even necessarily something that was malevolent, but there was just like a whole lot of like casual sexism, I thought, in the film, and particularly just kind of like a lot of lazy tropes like that. The help character, Olga was her name or something like that.
Jeez, you couldn't even remember her name, Gerda?
Olga. I mean, I got part of it right. Anyway,
The letter
like,
A.
yeah, and it also had consonants too. Anyway, I'm really not helping my case here. The thing that just like took me out of it was that some of the character dynamics in terms of particularly between men and women just seemed a little bit exaggerated. And I think that might just be because of the time. I don't know.
One thing, and I guess I forgot to mention this, I really enjoy the way they just stunt for no reason in their own houses.
Yeah.
Like they all wear fucking like full on suits and shit like that for no reason. They're just like, yeah, today's a good day to be a boss, and just fucking like put on all their shit. But I actually have another question for you guys now. And Nico, I'm going to lead off with you.
Okay.
Do you think there were some maybe misguided decisions some characters might have made? I know you talked about one with Jonathan. Why don't you go ahead and go in a little more detail in that particular scene?
Right. So as I was watching this movie, I texted Justin that Jonathan Harker is dumbass of the year and deserves to die. Like, this motherfucker came so prepared. And he even got into the belly of the beast. Like, he was in Castle Dracula, which looks a lot less menacing from the outside. Looks oddly, like, domestic, like you could see it in some sort of town in Sweden somewhere. But anyway, he comes into the monster's evil final lair. He's got the tools for the job. He's got the stakes. He's got, like, he's wearing a cross. And I think he also brought some garlic. He walks right fucking by Dracula, who he came there to kill, and doesn't do anything. Just why?
I I really couldn't answer you that question.
Like, one of his first key character bits is when we're revealing to, the audience, like when he's writing down in the diary, in fact, I have come here to kill Dracula. I leave this tome in case I fail. Like, well, that was fucking quick, eh, bud?
Yeah. I mean, he literally wrote, and by the way, he's like, I hope somebody, if I do fail, I hope someone comes to put me out of my misery. Yo, say no more, fam. Literally, Van Helsing showed up like the next day to take you out of your misery.
You thought that was the main character? Fuck what you thought.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess from my perspective, I obviously got to bring up Gerda because holy shit. I think she's kind of like the head of household kind of thing in the role.
Maid.
She seems to be, she seems like, I think she's a little bit higher up than that. I think she's like
She's
the one in charge.
Maid.
She's the one in charge. Alpha maid, I guess, is another way you could put it eloquently. There was a scene where Van Helsing literally says, hey, listen, no matter what, Lucy says or does, leave this garlic up. And then Gerda shows up later on in the night and she takes all the stuff away for Lucy. She puts all the garlic away and she opens up the windows so Dracula can come kill her. And at first I thought maybe like, oh, no one told her the message. But no, she literally says, you guys told me, I just didn't listen to you. And I was like, damn, why? Why would you do that? Why? I don't know.
I don't really know why, but I feel like she would get a semi-pass only because why would you think that having garlic up on the window would like be a life or death?
See, this is something that confuses the fuck out of me. Like, is this a world where vampires exist or previously they have not existed? Because, like, we've got some of the lores and the rule, right? But in other sections, it's like Dracula's just fucking flying into your patio. Motherfucker, I thought you had to ask to come in.
Okay, so I thought about that. And technically, if I am understanding it correctly, Dracula was never not invited. I say that because Lucy opens up the doors for him. That can be seen as an invitation. And she probably has already invited him in because he's been sucking her blood. So there's the first piece. And secondly, he never gets in to suck Mina's blood until Mina kind of helps bring the coffin into the house. Because Mina meets up with him and then he attacks her and then she comes back.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that was a pretty good detail as well because when she comes back, she's wearing like one of those fur coats and her neck is completely covered.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty dope. I guess, Dan, outside of those two characters, is there anyone else you think maybe made a really good decision or a really bad decision?
I feel like most characters made bad decisions. Just like, or not always. I guess there's one or two characters that didn't make bad decisions, but they just didn't really make good decisions. But I mean, like the little girl, we didn't really talk about her. Tanya?
Yes, her name is Tanya.
Yeah, Tanya. Okay, first of all, I thought she knew that Lucy was dead. And then she's like, oh, Aunt Lucy asked me to follow her in the middle of the fucking night to the middle of the woods. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. Why are you outside, Tanya? Why are you awake?
That was
Go back to bed, Tanya.
question.
Why didn't Arthur, when Jonathan told, or when Van Helsing told Arthur about like vampires, why didn't they tell the wife? They just left her in the dark to then later get murked. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of dumb decisions that could have been not dumb.
One thing I did appreciate though was when Tanya, they save her from getting, attacked by Lucy basically. And then Van Helsing's like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do for you. Take this cross, take my coat, and take this big ass crucifix. Like nothing's coming near you for a little bit. And I was like, wow.
But I do like how he was, like, when he was giving her all that shit, he was like, I'm going to be back in just a minute. But if you watch over that way, you'll see the sunrise. Wait, how fucking long are you going to be gone? It's the middle of the night.
I guess that's true. As well. Well, now we're going to get to a section that I've been wanting to talk about for this entire episode. The differences between the book and the movie. It is, it is a stretch to say that this is an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's a big stretch. Let me explain. First, the story is completely different from the start. Literally, the only commonalities this really shares is there's somebody called Dracula and he's a vampire. In the book, Jonathan Harker, it's similar enough, right? In the book, Jonathan Harker is going there to basically help Dracula prepare for his acquisition of land in England, Carfax Abbey. But in this, he's Dracula's librarian. He's like, yeah, I wanted to come to this castle so I could be isolated. But I also have a fiance. And I was like, what? And then that didn't seem to make a ton
ball
of
and
sense to me.
chain, am I right?
And here's where I had a kind of issue. So the characters are all mixed up in this movie. First off, they took 3 of the characters from the book, Lucy, Arthur, and Mina, and made them all related. When in the book, they were definitely not related.
Oh,
and
yeah.
In the book, Lucy, she marries Arthur Holmwood.
Yeah.
They made him her brother in this, but then they had him marry Mina, which didn't make any sense. And you could have literally just swapped their names around to make it more like the book. They completely cut out Quincy from the movie, which, okay, fine, I guess you could do that. But then there's so many changes. Like, wait a second. So why did Dracula even go to England? And in the book, Dracula starts off old and then he gets his youth back. But in this one, he just remains the same.
He's just chilling.
It's like, you know what it is? It's almost like they took portions of the book, very specific portions of the book, and then they were like, yeah, we can do this. Because, you know, there are some parts that are the same. Like Lucy in the book does lure children to try and, you know, suck their blood. But it's not Tanya, it's random kids. There's no Gerda, there's no like any of this other stuff that happens. And here's the other part that I didn't quite understand. Like they had Jonathan Harker turn, which completely changes the movie, but then they immediately kill him.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, why? What's the point of that? If you were going to like make such a big, you know, derivation from the book, then at least do something with it. But no, they just turned him to turn him and kill him. And I think that one lady, the vampire lady in the castle, she's supposed to be the representation of Dracula's harem because...
I mean, that makes sense.
Because like the same fight scene kind of happens. You know, Dracula fights off the harem in the book to save Jonathan from them. And he's like, no, he's mine. And I think that's pretty much what happened here. But again, I'm so mystified as to like the whole kind of like point, and you could have done the same thing as the book. Like I almost feel like they went out of their way to change things to just make it worse.
I wonder if they killed Jonathan as sort of like a surprise. Because going into the movie, I didn't expect Jonathan to die. Like I haven't read the book, but I kind of know loosely what the story was. So I was not expecting Jonathan to turn or get killed that quickly or anything. So I wonder if that was sort of the point there, sort of shock value almost.
I guess.
Dracula as done by D&D of Game of Thrones fare.
But you want to know what? Even if that was the case, I still feel like the movie could have progressed perfectly fine. And they could have literally still stuck more to the book. And I guess it's difficult to explain it if you haven't read the book, but they literally just took scenes from the book, cut some of them, kept some of them. Because like there's the end chase scene, right? In the book, you know, they're chasing Dracula back to his castle, just like they do here. They're chasing Dracula back to his castle. Obviously in the book, they kill him a completely different and way more badass way. In this one, I did appreciate Peter Cushing's, you know, Van Helsing kind of exposing him to the sunlight. But as Nico texted me, I mean, it was like broad daylight.
Yeah.
Like I was like, and that was also one thing, and perhaps the biggest yellow card for me was the beginning of this movie. He walks up to the castle in broad daylight. Gone is the whole Walpurgis Nacht kind of thing where it's like,
yes, thank you.
This is the night and it's terrifying and there's blue fairy fire.
It looks like a fucking IKEA village.
It does. And like a werewolf, well, he's a werewolf in some iterations, but like a real creepy, unearthly carriage driver picks him up in the dark night and takes him to Dracula's castle. All that is gone. It's literally, oh yeah, I just took the carriage right up to Castle Dracula. And that was the thing. Wait a second. You've been looking, Van Helsing says, I've been looking like my whole life for Dracula. But dog, Jonathan just applied to go work in his library. So, I mean, he couldn't have been that far away. And then at the end, this is the part that pisses me off the most. Dracula runs away on fucking like a horse and a buggy, and they follow him on 2 horses, and they chase his ass back to Castle Dracula, which apparently wasn't that far away from wherever they were.
It really wasn't.
They get there in like a day. If that. They chase him at night, and the sun starts coming up. That's how long it took. Woo.
I mean, check out the part with Tom Bombadil.
Shut up. So, but no, I will just say as a note, I am 2% salty they took out Quincy because not just because Quincy's the American, but Quincy is my favorite character in Dracula, and I hate whenever they take him out of stuff. But, that's just my piece. Dan, is this a scary movie?
Nah.
Nico, is this scary?
Honestly, like if I was young and I saw like some of the like violence, I could see myself being a little scared, but in 2020, no.
Okay.
I
Here's
could
a question.
see the end being a little scary, and
Oh, when he
Okay,
gets
yeah.
fucked up.
yeah, like the last like 6 or 7 minutes.
So, Dan, we've talked about the end once or twice. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience what actually happens to Dracula when the sun hits him?
Oh, good idea. So Van Helsing, he opens up the curtains, and then Dracula's hand like gets accidentally caught in the sun, and it just like turns to dust. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then Van Helsing kind of makes a makeshift cross and starts like trying to push Dracula back into the sunlight. As different parts of his body like get into the sunlight, they turn to dust or like age like super, super quickly or something. And then eventually, finally, Dracula's full body, or head at least, gets into the sunlight and then kind of like sort of looks like a smashed dust face, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was actually kind of cool. I thought it was pretty cool. And I wasn't expecting to see that in a movie from 58. So
No.
I was pleasantly surprised at that.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that you guys think that we could maybe do to make this movie scarier at all?
I would say more suspense.
Yeah.
I didn't really think that things weren't very suspenseful, I guess.
And that actually, I think, ties into my major point, but I'm going to let you finish what you're saying, though.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there wasn't too much buildup, and maybe it would be different if I saw it at the time it was released, 60 years ago. But it was just like, oh no, somebody got bit. Oh no. And nothing really seemed to, I don't know, there just wasn't suspense for me.
It seemed kind of like a silly, fantastic detective drama in a way.
So, Nico, I guess having said that, do you have any ideas that might improve this movie?
So I think honestly, like if it was a little longer and they gave more time to developing Dracula as a character, because honestly, most of what he's doing to get by is just lip service of, hey, it's the audience. They're going to know Dracula, right? We don't got to explain this dude, which fair. But like if he had more time to develop and show on screen how truly menacing and, feral he can be, then I would have bought some more of the horror aspects to this.
So you've both actually touched upon my idea, which is improve the pacing of this movie. Oftentimes we review movies that are too slow and ponderous.
This is the opposite.
This is the opposite. So the runtime of this movie is about an hour 21, I believe. And I feel like it dedicates too much time to things that don't matter in the end. When you like take it and you look at it, that the first portion's like what, maybe 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And for a segment that doesn't have a great deal to do with, I feel like, yes, it had to do with the rest of the movie because Jonathan had to die. But to me, if Jonathan was going to die, they should have killed him quicker and focused more on the because in the book and even in other films that I'm not going to really bring up, but like in the book and stuff like that, there's time, and you're right, Dan, building the tension, building the menace, like they cut off the portion about the ship, the Demeter, and Dracula coming across, but that portion alone was almost kind of like, they were kind of like they were like the jobbers, basically. They were there to basically get killed off by Dracula on that ship, the Demeter, and they were there to get killed so Dracula could seem more badass. And even Lucy, like Lucy's whole death, it's there because that's Dracula's first win against the heroes. It makes things seem hopeless. But in this one, Lucy was already half turned. So we didn't even get to see like an innocent girl fade and, like whatever happened. No, she was like, come and get me, Drac. And I was like, okay. So I agree with you guys though.
Blussy.
What is
Imagine
wrong
you just
with you?
called him Drac.
That's what his friends call him.
Is it? You
I would
his
like
friend
to
now?
apologize to everyone who heard the last 10 seconds. It
So,
will happen again.
speaking of things that happen over and over, what would you do? So I thought long and hard about what we would do for this week's What Would You Do segment, only because this is the first, but certainly not the last Dracula-themed movie. So I thought about it like this. And this week's What Would You Do is very simple. Okay? I'm going to ask you 2 separate questions.
All right.
Okay.
First, if you were Jonathan Harker and you came to kill Dracula, is there anything that you would do differently?
Kill Dracula.
Kill Dracula, yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So, now let's go ahead and swap gears here and say you're Van Helsing.
Okay.
If you're Van Helsing and there is one thing that you could do differently to really affect or change what happens in the movie, what would it be?
I would probably get real distracted and fuck around with Mina.
No, you can't do that.
Well, then I don't know, bud. I guess just come with like crosses up to the teeth and having just ate a nice plate of pasta aglio e olio or something, like just tons of fucking garlic, and come in there to do the business, and then actually do the business when you are in the place of business. But if you can't tell, I'm still mad that he didn't kill Dracula.
I kind of agree with Nico. I feel like I would arm myself up with more crosses and shit, because when he did use crosses, like he fucked people up. So like I also would have stayed with Lucy, like instead of just being like, hey, leave garlic here, don't open the windows, peace out. I would have like stayed there or some shit and like personally watched over.
You're good, right, fam?
I would have equipped a few more crosses.
So I would have done 2 things differently. First, I guess I would have just, so he had Jonathan's book, his diary from the start.
Yeah.
And I almost kind of feel like, okay, maybe you wouldn't want to tell them because you don't want to traumatize them and they don't need to know about Dracula. But once you suspect, i.e. know for a fact, that Lucy is being bitten by a vampire, you need to show them this book now.
Like as soon as you saw the pockmarks on the neck.
Yeah. And like, first off, yes, I would have definitely stayed with her. But secondly, and this was most mystifying, after Lucy dies, nobody guards Mina. They still, they were like outside the house. And they even have a conversation before and they're like, this bedroom faces 2 sides, right? Yep. And then they show a scene and like Dracula's, and this is the most hilarious scene in the whole movie. Dracula's in there like sucking Mina's blood. And you have Arthur looking up at the window from one side. He can't even see into the room. He just sees a light. And he's like, yep, she's safe. And I'm like, bruh, why wouldn't you just do that? And also, does it seem like they didn't garlic up the room for Mina at all?
It would have been smelled bad too. Like if that had been hanging around for a while, like getting rid of those 2 vases, it's not going to cut it.
Like they should have garlicked up the room for Mina. Because I think that was, and also put some crosses up, like put a cross on the window. I will say this movie did one thing really cool. Apparently when you're just now starting to turn, the cross, it can actually reveal if you're, like going to become like a vampire. That is present in other works as well. But I like the fact that like they actually made it show somebody who they didn't know was a vampire.
Right.
And then like, oh snap, she's actually a vampire. I appreciated that. But I also, and I did kind of have a problem with this. I don't like the lore that, you can repel a vampire by holding up 2, perpendicular sticks.
Yeah, that's whack as hell.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, I feel like it has to be like an actual legitimate cross or crucifix or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you got to have that. And I like the way they also like took a minute to just like, for no reason at all, shit on some of the lore and be like, but they must be able to turn into bats, wolves, or mist. Correct?
Common mistake.
No, that's bullshit. And I'm just, the fuck?
That's what I was talking about.
And I was like, why? There seems to be no reason for that, if only to just explain why that didn't happen in your movie. Or I don't know if that was a shot at the Universal movie. I don't know, but that just seemed odd. Like that's just a random, by the way, if you thought this, fuck you. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I got. But in terms of your favorite scenes though, if you had to call one, what was your favorite scene? Starting with you, Nico.
Oh, man. I don't really have a favorite scene.
You got to pick one, bro.
Oh, fuck, man. I feel bad. This is the first movie where I genuinely can't think of one. Like, and not because it was all, like, bad because it wasn't. I enjoyed the movie. It's just like it's what we mentioned about the pacing. It's just kind of there and then it's gone. I guess my favorite scene would probably just have to be the ending, just because I think it's funny as shit when Peter Cushing just like hops up on these, like lunchroom tables and then opens the window like, "Gotcha, bitch," and then he kills Dracula.
Dan, do you have a favorite scene in this movie?
So since Nico took my more serious one of the end, I have a different favorite scene as well. Is during the chase at the end for Dracula, there's like this dude, I think he owns the funeral home or whatever, but he's got like a guard type thing, guard post thing
yeah.
that blocks the road. And when Dracula was like tearing down the road with his all like 2 horsepower, he just like crashes right through the post. And the guy comes down, he's like, "Oh no," and he starts like kind of tying it back up, trying to fix it. And then Peter Cushing kind of comes around the corner and charges into it and breaks it down again. And the dude's just like, "Oh, fuck you." Like, it reminded me of in Avatar, the "my cabbages" guy.
Oh yeah. So did you say he was the I don't think he was the funeral home dude. I think that was the he was like a port authority or something like that.
Oh, maybe, yeah. That would make more sense.
That's where they found the shipment. Also,
Yeah,
everyone, to the audience as well, I'm gonna pull a Dan on Dan.
What?
Hey Dan, did you know that one horse doesn't have 1 horsepower? One horse has up to 15 horsepower.
That's a lot of
Or
horsepower.
16.
So you mean like cars only have like 4 horses worth of
I'm just letting you know, one
8
horses, according to a very, very, very specific source that I can't, tell you where I got it.
Did you
An
talk to a
average
horse?
workhorse.
You fucking
No.
sheep actually believe in horses?
No, it's pigeons that aren't real. My favorite scene was, since you guys kind of took some of the better ones, I would have to say my favorite scene is for when you first see Lucy. And I know I kind of talk shit about it, but I also really liked it. When, she does open up and Dracula does come in. I think that's maybe the only scene where it did have a little bit of, for me, a slight inkling of tension. Because it's like, oh, why would she do that? Why is she opening the windows? What's about to come in? And yeah, it's Dracula. But I don't know. I just kind of liked how things were. And I like how, she's wearing the cross. Although, is that a potential plot hole? I mean, she'd already been bitten. But she was still wearing the cross.
Yeah.
Wait,
no, she puts it in her bedside drawer.
No. She was wearing it. See what I'm saying, Nico? Because Mina got bit once and the cross burned her.
Oh, fuck, you're right.
Yeah.
And Lucy had already been bitten. It was like clear as day she'd already been bitten.
Fuck, man.
I got it.
Can't have shit.
You should write to them, tell them to fix it.
I should. Somebody can go pull a George Lucas, edit that.
Remains hidden for 62 years. You thought you got away, but not this time, motherfuckers.
Not with Justin on the case.
Nope. But no, I like that. And as
The
well,
cold
I do.
case you didn't know you were waiting for.
And speaking of, I also think we got to give, as a podcast, we got to give some props to the body count, just the general amount of people that got staked. Like,
Yeah.
people were getting staked all over the place in the beginning. Like, it was like, this woman, yeah, I know Dracula's the real bad guy, but I'm gonna take her out first. Tonk, you're done. Oh, Jonathan, you turn into a vampire? I'm not even gonna try talking to you. You're done. Oh, Lucy, man, you just ran away. Arthur, maybe she can lead us to Dracula. No, let's kill her now. I can't stand that. You're absolutely right. You're done. It's just like, it's pretty effective. So now we're going to move over to the critical review. So this movie, ooh, buddy. It's got an 89% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's got an 80% from the audience. And I'm going to go ahead and read this. I don't quite believe this at all, but it says, trading gore for grandeur, Horror of Dracula marks an impressive turn for invertebrate thought that said invertebrates, Christopher Lee as the titular vampire and a typical Hammer mood that makes aristocracy quite sexy.
We've got it, Christopher Lee's spine. What do I do with it? Someone tell me. The boys in the lab didn't tell me what to do with it. They just said to get it. What do I do with Christopher Lee's spine?
To be honest with you, I didn't really get the aristocracy is quite sexy part, but maybe I'm just, a degenerate from 2020.
That's also like the most base level commentary out there. Are you kidding? Vampires are attractive? Oh, gee, I'm sure glad you passed your 4th grade English class there, Bob, and know what symbolism is. Get the fuck out of here.
To be fair, that's just the general kind of critic consensus at the top of the page. I didn't really read. That
Yeah,
wasn't
well,
like
the
a
general
specific critic.
consensus can get fucked.
Well, shit.
All right, so speaking of,
62 years later.
Oh, shit. Speaking of, what'd you think of this movie? If you had to rate it on a scale from 1 to 100, where would you place it? We're going to start with Man on Fire, Nico.
The movie's all right. I didn't like it as much as the audience or the critics, but it was fine.
All right, what'd you
give
give
it like a 72.
Okay.
Like it was. There was at no point was I thinking, this is noticeably bad, and I did have a good time watching it. I just kind of turned off my brain for a little bit, and it was very silly. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, we're gonna go now to D, but D don't stand for Dracula, stands for Dan. So, what do you think, Dan? Where would you rate this?
Well, bearing in mind that to me, anything above 50 is like good movie and below 50 is bad movie.
No.
Oh no.
I would put it at like a 55.
Oh,
wow.
Which sounds bad, and it's not great, but it's not like bad,
You know what's
Yeah.
funny?
What's funny?
Do you know what I was gonna rate the movie?
57.
58.
Hmm.
I am on that same, scale with Dan where I think 50, again, I don't want to make it seem like it's so terrible because it's not. And, I enjoyed watching it, it was cool, especially, it's Halloween time. I think that by itself makes every horror movie a little more attractive. But I think, and I'm trying not, if I was judging it against the book, I would have given it a much harsher score. But
for sure, I bet.
I think that just to me, the pacing was a little off. It was too fast, too much happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, movie done. I was mystified by some things that happened. Yeah, that's where I see it.
Actually, no, you're right. I feel like I was a little too lenient with my score.
No, don't be like us.
Don't be a hater.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lower it by much, but because I do maintain that I had a fun time watching it. But I think I would give it like a 65 or so.
And let's go ahead now and time to make our judgments. Would you recommend this to somebody? I'm going to lead off with you, Dan.
I would say only if you're in the mood to watch like an older kind of movie. If you are, I'd say it's a pretty decent flick for that. But at least for me, it's like I have to be in the mood to watch an older movie like this.
Right.
So if my friend or whoever is looking for that, then yeah, I think I would.
Okay, Nico, how about you?
Go watch The Skull instead. It's really good. I'm gonna I would recommend this movie just because I think it's fun and silly, but go watch The Skull instead.
I'm pretty much I'm a copy paste of Dan pretty much, but yeah, I would say that if you're in the mood for an old school joint, yeah, go ahead, watch it. It's good enough. I mean, I've seen way worse, and for what it's worth, it's not bad. You're not going to walk out feeling angry or anything like that. You're just going to be like, it is what it is. So yeah, I'd recommend it. Golden seal of approval. 1, 2, 3. No. All right, then. So that's been it from us here at Don't Open That Door. It's, Dan, Nico, and Just. So please, as we draw ever nearer to Halloween, make sure your windows are locked tight. If you feel a little uneasy, wrap some garlic around your window and then use plenty of it in the food that you eat. And, ladies and gents, don't open that door.
Or window.
Or window. Have a great night.